Yep, we're live and we'll go ahead and get started in about, well, right now. Hello and welcome to So a Neighbor Asked, a monthly webinar series from Mountain States Legal Foundation, where our attorneys answer your questions to help you understand the Constitution, the law, and the principles of liberty. I'm your host, Karina Constancio, Marketing Associate here at Mountain States Legal Foundation. MSLF is a nonprofit public interest law firm dedicated to restoring those rights enshrined in the Constitution at zero legal cost to our clients. From our headquarters in beautiful Colorado, we litigate crucial cases across the country at every level, especially those that will make a difference in our country. Today, I am joined by Mountain States Deputy General Counsel Sean Nation and Mountain States client in the Garcia v. Polis case, Alicia Garcia. She is a firearms instructor and an active advocate for Second Amendment rights and education. Welcome, Alicia.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, so we will go ahead and get started and straight into our questions. So a neighbor asked, how did MSLF do in court today? So just give us kind of a brief overview of your initial thoughts, and then we'll dive deeper into some more questions.
Yeah, so we had what's called a preliminary injunction hearing starting last Thursday, going all day Thursday, and then finishing up in about an hour this morning. And we are challenging Colorado's new 3-day waiting period to acquire a firearm. So you go to a gun store, or sporting goods store, you want to buy a spiffy new rifle or a handgun or whatever you want. You pay the money, you pass a background check, and then they have to hang on to it for 72 hours. You can't get your firearm. And we're arguing that that is a violation of the Second Amendment. I feel pretty good about our presentation of evidence, and I feel pretty good about the arguments that we made. Our judge is a Carter appointee who I suspect he has not previously ruled on any Second Amendment cases, but I suspect that he's probably not as friendly to the Second Amendment as we might like him to be. But I have every confidence that he will come out with a well-reasoned order, and then the parties will likely go to the 10th Circuit to appeal, and maybe even to the Supreme Court if we get that far.
Alicia, what are your thoughts about our days in courts, and then also just like how you're seeing this law affect you and people within the firearms industry?
Well, hi, my name is Alicia. It's not Alicia. I'm not an Alicia.
Yeah.
I'm an Alicia. How is this affecting me? Honestly, I'm really opinionated on this, and I mean, it is what it is. I'm one of those people that has to say what they have to say, and frankly, I think this law is a little ridiculous. There's, no confounding evidence that shows more gun control is the answer to, affecting the mental health and violence problem that we're facing in Colorado, much less America. I feel that we had some very good rebuttals to the witness testimony today. I feel that the witness that the state called today was a little presumptuous in their experience with firearms. I have a hard time listening to people that want to speak statistical and educated about something they have zero life experience with. So I'm thinking in my head as he's speaking, like, how many guns have you fired? When was the last time you actually were in a situation where you understood what it meant to buy a gun? How many guns have you tried to buy? What were the reasons you would need a gun? Since you're talking about how numbers affects guns, these are people that do not reflect my community or my upbringing. I'm a Colorado native. I grew up, in the poor west side of Denver. And those are the places where laws like this really affect communities like mine in a negative outcome. And I think about, all the rebuttals people want to have to me about what it means to, oh, why can't you just wait? You have so many guns. And, that's also what the opposition is saying is, being a firearms instructor, being somebody who shoots avidly and purchases guns avidly, you should be less inconvenienced by this because of how many guns that you have. And baffles me because they're looking at this as a monetary tool, like one tool does the job. If one tool did the job, we wouldn't need multiple styles of cars or guns or toothbrushes, of all these things. It comes out to personal preference of whatever tool you choose to use for the reason you're choosing to use it. And I think it's a little ridiculous that people are asking me why it matters and why I have to prove why it matters to me that this is an infringement on my constitutional right to self-defense. I think about women or people that, and it's usually brown women or from poor communities that are affected by, assailants and people threatening their life in harm, that they would need equalizing. It's, the handicapped community that doesn't have a way to fight back that needs a firearm, the elderly community that doesn't have a way to fight back and equalize that. And I think about, those people in that community that are literally subject to violence because of the poverty, because of the neighborhoods they live in, because of the desperation in the neighborhoods that they live in. And if somebody were to go up to my grandma tomorrow morning and threaten her life, and she calls the cops and she presses charges, what if she doesn't even know who that person's name is to press charges? He's just somebody that she's never seen before, but definitely has seen her and avidly threatened her and said, I'm going to come and keep you warm tonight, little old lady. And she does everything she's supposed to. She calls the police. She, files a restraining order if she can, because she doesn't know who he is. And now it's like, okay, well, best of luck, Ms. Hermosillo. I hope that nobody comes into your house tonight and tries to kill you for 3 days. Because if you're going to go to a gun shop right now and attempt to purchase a firearm, even if you've passed the background check, even if you are not a prohibited person from owning firearms, guess what? Best of luck to you for the next 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the witness that Ms. Garcia is referring to is a professor at UCLA who is a Harvard PhD and an economist named Chris Poliquin. And he was just testifying about the effects of the law. And our argument is that the Supreme Court in Bruin said, you don't get to look at the effects of the law. You'll have to look at the history and tradition. So he's inviting the court to commit reversible error, and we'll see what the court ultimately does.
Alicia, you were the first person to testify and bring witness in this hearing. Tell us what that was like for you, how that experience was, and what your thoughts about the state's questioning was.
I felt that they had no idea what they were asking me. I was very comfortable up there. I don't really like to speak in public or do things of that nature, but I seem to be pretty comfortable in that arena. So I walked up there, I sat down, I answered yes or no to the questions they were asking me. I would say that it's very difficult for someone like me who's as fiery spirited and, rebel heart as I am, to bite my tongue and not elaborate on things. However, I do realize that they are looking for any excuse to, discredit or manipulate what I say. So I just answer the question as they ask it. And that's pretty simple for me. This was my first time ever testifying in something of this nature. So I wasn't, there's no way to really prepare for it. You can do a mock trial or all that jazz, but I don't know who these people are. I don't know what they intend to ask me, and I don't know their energy, and I'm an energy person. So to me, it's like, okay, I got to read the room and figure out like who these people are and how they're going to come at me. And you just have to do it.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sean, both sides brought expert witnesses. Mountain States brought Clayton Kramer, and the state brought Dr. Raymond Roth. Can you briefly walk us through kind of the highlights of Dr. Kramer's or Mr. Kramer's testimony in our cross-examination?
Sure. So Clayton Kramer is a historian who studied firearms regulations, particularly around the time of the founding. And his testimony, so the legal standard, if something is constitutional under the Second Amendment, under the Bruin case from 2020 or 2021, says you have to look at our country's history and tradition when it comes to regulating firearms to determine if a given regulation that is imposed today is lawful. So you take something like a law banning you being intoxicated while handling firearms. While those laws also existed at the founding, so they're generally pretty good. Laws dispossessing felons. Well, they dispossessed dangerous people back at the founding as well, so those are pretty good. And what Mr. Kramer testified is that there wasn't any law or tradition of delaying your acquisition of a firearm, even if you've passed a background check. Based on his research, the earliest one was a one-day waiting period for concealable weapons in California in the 1920s. And our argument is that that's too late, that doesn't count. And so because there's not a history and tradition of forcing arbitrary waiting periods, we think the judge should hold that it's unconstitutional and enjoin the law from taking effect, enjoy further enforcement of the law. Hopefully in the next couple of days, we'll get an order to that effect, but we'll deal with it when we get it. Raymond Roth is a professor at the Ohio State University, and apparently he testified that the administration there emphasizes the Ohio State, so I guess I'll give him that as well. He was offered as an expert in firearms technologies have changed. Our colleague Brian Abbas did a wonderful job of doing cross-examination, essentially pointing out how little he actually knew about firearms technologies and both in the 1790s and through the Civil War, just sort of what the Supreme Court has said is the relevant period. And so, I thought it was a really good job of undermining his opinions. Of course, we'll see what the court has to say.
May I
Alicia,
chime in on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amusing to me to once again see people speak about schools that they have never experienced before. So it's basically like asking a teenager what it's like to have X amount of years driving vehicles, multiple different vehicles. And it's like, well, you've read about those cars, you've read about those things. How many times have you actually been behind the trigger of one and ran them? So it's, and I don't know if I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say this. It's very difficult for me. My name is Alicia Garcia. Okay. When you see me on a piece of paper, people don't even think that I'm an American citizen. They don't think I speak English. My name is literally Alice Jones of the Spanish speaking community. So they think, oh, Alicia Garcia, she must be, whatever the stereotype is that comes with that. And what people don't understand is I'm literally sitting in court listening to an academic white man talk about how violence and guns affects poor communities of color. And we're a statistic to those people. We're not people to these people. They're saying Black people, brown people, Hispanic people. That's how they're referring to me and my community. And they're looking at it from a bird's eye perspective of numbers on how they've sought out these numbers to find exactly what they want. They have a bias that they're seeking out because it gives them notoriety. It gives them academia. It gives them a status to their name to say, oh, I've done this and this and this now. Let me check it off the box. So now I am an accomplished academic to my peers. And I'm thinking in my mind, you're talking about a life and a community and an experience that you've never actually stepped into. You have no idea why people carry guns or why those violent things happen. And I heard him talking about, and he said, especially, he was saying something about Black people, how Black people carry guns for status in the hood or to behave a certain way for cred or street cred. And I'm thinking in my mind, they carry it for protection, literally. Yeah. So to me, it's like, oh, okay. But when it comes to Mountain States Legal, I was very, very proud to sit there and be in that courtroom that day and listen to the questions that you beautiful people were asking to this man, because, and even though he's a firearms expert, he had no expertise whatsoever. So I was very proud of the
Well,
people that I was sitting with that day.
Well, we're glad to make you proud. I think part of that conversation was where Professor Roth was referring to gangs as neighborhood organizations and
Oh yeah, that's right.
refusing to concede that that gangs were really a problem. But yeah,
Not about that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I think at one point, at one point he was talking about the crime rates would drop if you took out gang and gangland violence, and he was like, well, no, those are incidents that happen over respect, women, and territory, and it's like, so you mean a gang?
Yeah. And so everyone's aware, Professor Roth is he's appearing in a lot of these cases on behalf of state and local governments trying to impose unconstitutional restrictions on firearms. So this probably won't be the last time we cross swords with him.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see why he's doing this, what his motivation is. Obviously, there is a motivation, whether it is, like I said, does he get paid for making these appearances? Does he get a certain, check box next to his name for his accreditations, etc.?
So you can find him online on YouTube and C-SPAN. I credit him with being a true believer, as a true pacifist. I think he is motivated by what he believes is good intentions. But as a true pacifist, which I believe he is, he would prefer that everyone be disarmed. And that's where I, of course, disagree with him. And
wholeheartedly.
Yes. So, not to, I don't think he's in it just for the money. I do think he is a true believer.
So not to get off topic, but I'm a comic book nerd. And
okay.
I've been a comic book nerd since I was a little kid. I love the X-Men. And Magneto is one of my most admired villains. And the reason I admire him as a villain so much is because he truly believes what he is doing is the right thing. And when we're in scenarios like this in modern society, with the things that we're affecting as a community today, when we're looking at the opposition of people that feel completely 180 from what we do, they truly believe they have been groomed and bred and indoctrinated to truly believe their plight. And that's what makes it so dangerous, is because they truly do not understand why these privileges aren't privileges, they're freedoms. Because Absolutely. To them, they're like, well, why can't you just go without? And they're truly dumbfounded as to why this means so much to us. And that's why it's so important that we're diligent and we stay consistent with this, because they will never let up.
Yeah,
absolutely. Now I know that you guys finished up the court session early this morning, and you guys touched on it a little bit, but how did closing arguments go and the conclusion of the hearing? So
kind of what we would have expected, based on there's been papers passed back and forth, briefs. We argued that the Supreme Court's Bruin decision means you look at the history and tradition, and then since there is no history or tradition of waiting periods, that the court shouldn't let the law go into effect, or should enjoin further enforcement of the law. The state argued that the policy was really, really important and could, in their view, would save lives. And I reminded in the court that even if it is a good policy, it can still be unconstitutional. And not every good policy passes constitutional muster, and not every bad policy is unconstitutional. We have certain ways of evaluating that the Supreme Court has told us, this is how you should look at it. This is how the analysis should flow. And if the judge does that and follows that precedent, then I think we've got a good shot at winning at the district court. As I said, I don't know, but I do suspect that our judge is less inclined to do so. So he may find a creative way around it, and then we'll keep going. This is a marathon, not a sprint, to use a cliche.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Alicia, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I wasn't. I am not an attorney,
Mm-hmm.
so being that this is my, not, no pun intended, my shotgun experience for being in a, court proceeding such as this, I wasn't sure how that is allowed to flow. So when the plaintiff side spoke, then, Pola's side spoke, I didn't realize that we could speak again after that.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh.
Typically, so we have the initial burden of proof to show that the law is unconstitutional and that we're likely to prevail and a few other legal things. And so we got to go first, and then they go, and then we get to rebut. Ultimately, if our analysis is correct and we're able to show that it's an unconstitutional burden on your Second Amendment rights, they then have the burden of proof to show that there's a history and tradition. That's why their best historical analogy that they brought out was disarming people while intoxicated. That's why they were really pushing that. Ultimately, I don't personally find it persuasive, and I'm not sure the state really finds it all that persuasive, because they didn't argue it as forcefully as I thought. They really argued that it was an important policy that they should be allowed to do, really setting aside the constitutionality. That's why I think they were inviting the judge to create reversible error, and we'll see if he accepts their invitation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We're getting ready to kind of wrap up, so I will let you guys give closing thoughts. Alicia, we'll start with you.
This is not the popular decision. A lot of people, and I'm really noticing this, that a lot of people want to say that they're about freedom, that they stand for freedom, that they're a constitutionalist, that they want to make sure that freedoms are no longer being infringed. And I hear a lot of that in this Second Amendment community. I have not seen a lot of action. And it's very disappointing to me that at the end of the day, these big corporations that say they are here to represent the people and stand for the people, they're nowhere to be found in these things. I truly believe that if that were the case, laws like this would not have been passed in the first place. And so that's the part that really irritates me, is that we have already gone this far, that we are now having to defend ourselves once again. We shouldn't have gotten here. At the same time, I really want to applaud you as a team. I really want to applaud Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. I want to applaud Triple J Armory. I want to applaud Dragon Man and Modern Defense and all of these wonderful companies that have supported us standing up to the state in order to make change for the people, because it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of getting uncomfortable, being inconvenienced, and really putting a spotlight on yourself to make things like this happen. And I don't think there is enough credit for people that are actually out here doing the work. So I really want to applaud all of you for doing this and for standing up for what's right. And I also want to tell the people listening, it's time that you start holding these other organizations accountable. They need to hear from you. And they need to hear that you are displeased with the fact that these laws are getting to the point where they're being passed, that we have to fight back against them. You need to get involved, and you need to start using what you can in order to help contribute to change, because silence is compliance. You can donate to Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. You can donate to Mountain States Legal. You can get up off of your booty and get on the phone and call your lawmakers and express your opinions. That's all that costs, is your time.
Agreed. And we will be here for this fight. We are gearing up, preparing to take this all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary. And, this is what we do, as we fight for civil rights and for civil liberties. and we will always be here to hold the state accountable.
Mhm.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you all for your time. And we'll talk to you in about a month.
Thank
Right.
you, Alicia, and goodbye, everyone. If you would like to keep up with our work, you can follow us on our social media at Mountain States Legal. You can also follow Alicia and her work at the Boomstick Babe. And so we will see you again soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.